You already know this feeling. You have known it your entire life, and you have never had a name for it that felt accurate enough. It is not quite anger. It is not quite sadness. It is something older than both of those things, something that lives below the level of thought, something that arrives in your body before your mind has finished processing what happened. Someone you trusted did something they should not have done. Maybe they told something you shared in confidence. Maybe they chose someone else when you needed them to choose you. Maybe you discovered, quietly and without drama, that the version of you they presented to the world when you were not in the room was not the version you thought they saw. And what you felt, what you still feel when you let yourself think about it, is not something that modern psychology has given you adequate language for, because modern psychology did not invent the experience. Evolution did. What you felt in that moment was the activation of the oldest threat detection system in the human nervous system. A system that is approximately 300,000 years old. A system that was calibrated not for the social complexity of modern life, but for a world in which betrayal within the group was not an emotional injury. It was a survival emergency. And the reason you still feel it so deeply, the reason it sits in your body differently from other kinds of pain, the reason it can wake you up at 3 in the morning years after it happened, is that the part of your brain that processes it has not been updated since the Paleolithic. It does not know you are safe. It does not know you can leave. It does not know that the person who betrayed you is not a direct threat to your survival. It knows only one thing. Someone inside the group acted against the group, and in the world your nervous system was built for, that required an immediate, decisive, collective response. Over the next 20 minutes, you are going to find out exactly what that response looked like. And you are going to understand, for the first time, why what you feel when someone betrays you is not weakness, not oversensitivity, not an inability to let things go. It is 300,000 years of your species telling you that what happened to you was real, and that it mattered, and that you were right to feel it. Picture yourself in a group of 15 people, not a metaphor. An actual group of 15 human beings, the size of the inner social circle that evolutionary anthropologist Robin Dunbar's research identifies as the cognitive limit of deep intimate relationship, the number of people whose emotional states you can track simultaneously, the number of people whose faces your nervous system learns at a resolution that it never achieves with anyone outside that circle. These 15 people are your entire world, not your entire social world, your entire world. They are your food supply, your physical protection, your medical system, your memory bank, your emotional regulation, your reason for getting up in the morning. Everything that keeps you alive passes through these 15 people, which means that everything about how you move through these 15 relationships matters at the level of survival, not preference. You do not choose whether to care about your standing in this group. Your nervous system cares automatically, continuously, before you are conscious of it, because in the world your nervous system was built for, your standing in this group was the single most important determinant of whether you lived or died. And then one of them does something. Something small, maybe. Something that could be explained away. They take slightly more than their share when food is distributed, in a way that is just ambiguous enough that calling it out feels risky. They say something to another group member about you that they would not say to your face, and you find out not directly but through the specific social texture that changes around you afterward, the way certain conversations stop when you approach, the way a particular kind of eye contact becomes slightly less available. You notice it the way you notice a sound that stops rather than one that starts, by its absence, by the specific quality of a space where something used to be. Something is beginning. The research on social exclusion in small human groups produces findings that most people find disproportionate until they understand the evolutionary context. A 2003 study by psychologist Kipling Williams at Purdue University used a simple online ball-tossing game, a game so trivial it barely qualifies as interaction, in which participants were gradually excluded by the other players. The participants had never met the other players. They would never meet them. The exclusion lasted approximately 3 minutes and involved a digital ball-tossing game with cartoon avatars. The neuroimaging results showed that the social pain of this trivial, anonymous, meaningless exclusion activated the same neural regions as physical pain, specifically the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, the regions that process the experience of being hurt in the body. 3 minutes. A ball-tossing game. Strangers. And the brain responded as if the body had been injured, because from the perspective of the ancestral nervous system, it had been, Social exclusion in a group of 15 people in the Paleolithic was not an uncomfortable social experience. It was the beginning of a process that frequently ended in death. The excluded individual lost access to food sharing, lost access to physical protection, lost access to the collective knowledge and cooperative labor that made survival possible in an environment where individual survival was essentially impossible. The nervous system that produces the pain of social exclusion is not malfunctioning when it treats a minor social slight as a physical emergency. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is telling you that something is wrong in the group, and in the world it was built for, something wrong in the group required immediate attention. You keep watching, you keep noticing. The pattern accumulates in a way that defies casual explanation but resists definitive confirmation. Is it real? Are you imagining it? The uncertainty itself is part of what makes betrayal so physiologically expensive. The nervous system cannot resolve the threat assessment, so it stays activated, running the surveillance program continuously, consuming energy and attention that in the ancestral world would have been redirected immediately once the threat was clearly identified. Modern betrayal traps you in the detection phase. Ancient betrayal moved quickly to resolution, and the resolution, when it came, was nothing like what your modern mind is imagining. In every documented hunter-gatherer society that anthropologists have studied in sufficient depth to access their internal conflict resolution practices, the same pattern emerges with a consistency that makes it impossible to dismiss as cultural coincidence. The response to betrayal within the group was not primarily punitive. It was primarily social, and its mechanism was something that modern people encounter only in its most attenuated, domesticated forms, stripped of the biological intensity that made it so devastatingly effective in its original context. The mechanism was ostracism. Not temporary social cooling. Not the passive-aggressive withdrawal that modern people engage in after a conflict. Deliberate, coordinated, total removal of social attention from the individual who had acted against the group's interests. A practice so consistent across hunter-gatherer cultures that Christopher Boehm, in his landmark anthropological study Hierarchy in the Forest, identifies it as the primary mechanism by which egalitarian prehistoric societies regulated individual behavior and maintained the cooperative norms that made group survival possible. The ostracized individual was not expelled from the group in most cases. They continued to be physically present. They continued to eat, to sleep, to move through the shared space of the community. What changed was the quality of social attention directed at them. They ceased to exist, in a social sense, for a period determined by the severity of what they had done and the collective judgment of the group. No one responded to their attempts at communication. No one acknowledged their presence. No one shared information with them or included them in collaborative activities. They were, functionally, a ghost, present in body, absent in the only dimension that mattered to the ancestral nervous system, which is the social dimension. And what the research on ostracism has revealed about the physiological effects of this practice is extraordinary and disturbing in equal measure, because the experience of being ostracized, of having social attention deliberately withdrawn, produces a cascade of neurological and hormonal responses that goes far beyond the discomfort of hurt feelings. A comprehensive 2014 meta-analysis by Nathaniel Eisenberger at UCLA reviewed the neuroscience of social exclusion across multiple studies and found that chronic ostracism activates the same stress hormone cascade as chronic physical threat, sustained elevated cortisol, suppressed immune function, disrupted sleep architecture, degraded prefrontal cortex function. The body under ostracism is the body under siege. Which makes sense. Once you understand what ostracism meant in the ancestral world, it meant that the group was withdrawing the cooperative support that kept you alive. Your body knew this. Your body responded to it exactly as it would respond to the approach of a predator or the arrival of famine. The person being ostracized in a prehistoric group of 15 was not experiencing a social discomfort. They were experiencing a survival crisis with a specific behavioral message encoded in it. What you did was not acceptable. And until you demonstrate that you understand that and will not do it again, the group cannot trust you with the cooperative resources that its survival depends on. But here is the part that the history of betrayal almost never acknowledges. The ostracism was not only a punishment for the one who betrayed, it was also a signal to everyone else, a signal that said, the group sees what happened, the group has a standard, the group will enforce that standard through collective action. You are safe here. What happened to you was real. And we know it. If right now you are thinking of a specific person, Someone who did something that your nervous system never fully resolved. Subscribe before we get to the end of this. Because what comes next is the part that most content about betrayal never reaches. Not how to forgive, not how to move on, not how to protect yourself next time. What came next in the ancestral world? And why understanding it might be the only thing that actually gives your nervous system what it has been waiting for since it happened. Here is the part of the story that 300,000 years of human experience has been building toward, and that modern life has made almost impossible to access. The betrayal in the ancestral group was not the end of a relationship. It was the beginning of a process. A process that had a structure, a timeline, and crucially, a resolution. The person who had acted against the group's interests was made to feel, through the mechanism of coordinated social withdrawal, exactly what their action had cost everyone else. Not through punishment designed to harm, through the withdrawal of the thing that the ancestral world made clear was the most valuable resource available to any human being, social belonging. They felt its absence the way you feel hunger, not as an idea, not as an emotion, but as a physical condition of the body, a state of deprivation that demanded resolution. And then, and this is the part that matters, they came back. They came back through a specific process of repair that every documented hunter-gatherer conflict resolution system includes: acknowledgement of what had been done, demonstration of changed behavior, and the gradual restoration of social attention by the group, starting with the most forgiving members and spreading outward as trust rebuilt itself through repeated evidence of trustworthiness. The group let them back in, not because the group had forgotten, not because the group had decided the betrayal didn't matter, but because the group's survival depended on its members, and permanently excluding a member was a cost that the group could rarely afford to pay. The repair was not forgiveness in the modern sense, the expectation that you manufacture a feeling of warmth towards someone who hurt you before they have demonstrated any understanding of what they did. It was something more precise and more practical than that. Red meaning for beyond and out 40.8 standard. Kapser something the problem April of this dart. It was the behavioral restoration of trustworthiness. It was min arbany. It wasn't you to cannibal room. Witnessed by everyone in input in the prelim der your roles be parket. It was to speak globe over when them speak to all iliwa the lingy ev. Hockey fraud simon no. Hi, it was the behavioral restoration of through bullet to solve. It was the plan for cruelly world. And here is what that resolution gave everyone who had witnessed the betrayal and its repair. Not just the resolution of a conflict between two individuals, but the restoration of the group's belief in its own capacity to enforce its norms and protect its members. The group saw what you lost. The group named it. The group responded to it as a collective. And when the repair was made, you knew, not through words but through the changed quality of social attention that the repaired relationship produced, that the group had held the standard on your behalf. You were not alone in what happened to you. You never were, in the world your nervous system was built for. The tragedy of modern betrayal is not that the injury is greater than it was in the ancestral world. The injury is the same. The nervous system response is identical. The tragedy is the absence of the structure that gave the ancestral injury its resolution. You are left with a nervous system that is waiting for a collective response that never comes, waiting for the group to see what happened, to name it, to enforce the standard, to witness the repair or the exclusion, and give your pain the social acknowledgement that the ancestral world provided automatically. You process modern betrayal alone, with a nervous system that was built to process it collectively. And what you call the inability to let things go, the rumination, the replaying, the 3 a.m. activation of memories you thought you had resolved, is not a failure of emotional regulation. It is a nervous system that has not received the signal it was built to receive. The signal that says, the group knows. The group responded. You can stop scanning for the threat now. You are safe. The wound is witnessed. So here is the question that 300,000 years of human social evolution is leaving with you as this ends. Think of the betrayal that your nervous system never fully resolved, the one you still carry. Ask yourself not whether you have forgiven it. That is a modern question, and it may be the wrong one. Ask yourself instead whether the group ever saw it, whether anyone ever named it out loud in your presence and said, what happened to you was real, and it mattered, and we know it. Because if they did not, if the betrayal was processed in the modern way, in private, in isolation, without collective witness or collective response, then your nervous system is not holding on to something it should release. It is waiting for something it never received. And the most important thing you can understand about the pain you still carry is that the part of you that will not let it go is not broken. It is 300,000 years old, and it knows exactly what it needs. Leave in the comments the one word that describes what you still carry. You do not have to explain it. Just the word, because the first step toward what your nervous system has been waiting for is someone seeing it.